It's actually extremely hard to measure how effective the current competition law system is. We have refined statistical techniques over time, but the main fundamental problem is still the same, which is that we observe the population of firms who have violated competition law and are detected. We don't observe the ones who have violated competition law but go undetected, and we do not observe the ones who are deterred effectively from violating competition law. I was presenting a recent piece of research which deals with the level at which liability has to be placed, the corporation or the individual managers, when firms have difficulties monitoring their managers. So this is a paper that tries to determine whether we should go for a system where we have only, say, corporate liability, or a system in which we have both sanctions on individuals and on corporations. If firms cannot observe in real time the behavior of their managers, giving incentives for profit is actually giving an incentive for engaging into illegal conduct. If managers are actually directly targeted and sanctioned for those conducts, that gives firms a tool to incentivize those managers not to engage into, say, price fixing in the first place. So that's the key mechanism I identify in my research. The results are that if the sanctions can be very, very high, individual sanctions are actually enough to deter competition law violations. But in practice, this is very unlikely, and mixed systems involving both corporate level and individual level sanctions are typically optimal. So it's extremely hard to change the legal framework under which the European Commission operates. It typically requires a change to regulations, even worse, changes to the treaty itself, and that's extremely hard to achieve. If there is one thing we learn from the law and economics literature, it is that uncertainty about conviction and about the quantum of sanctions do not help with deterrence. So if there is one thing we can currently do in order to improve deterrence, that would be to decrease the level of uncertainty and enforce rules which are much more harder to figure out for firms. I think what the proceedings have shown since this morning is that there is much more acceptance of the desire to actually move to a system where some individual sanctions are applied in at least some of the cases, typically the hardcore cartel cases. And I think this is new. It wasn't the case 10 years ago.